UFOs are being seen all over the world. Moreover, high-ranking government, Air Force, Army, and Navy officials are now coming forward as witnesses to the UFO extraterrestrial secrecy that has been withheld from the public for many years. But whistleblowers and researchers come from a variety of different backgrounds. Len Kasten isn't the type of person you'd expect to see at a UFO conference. He has a bachelor's degree from Cornell University, where he majored in psychology and minored in literature and philosophy. After graduating from Cornell, he entered the U.S. Air Force Aviation Cadet Program and later joined the Air Force. However, many years later, while in the Air Force, he experienced a UFO encounter that had a transformative effect on his life. This set him on a very unusual path, which eventually led to one of the most controversial conspiracy theories of all: the Reptilians. Part 1. Reptilian Origins, Dream Control, and the Human Potential. Kasten believes that behind human history lies a single, coherent extraterrestrial record about our origin and the forces trying to control us. The beings behind our manipulation are unimaginably old, technologically and psychically advanced, and extremely experienced in conquest. He believes the situation is now critical and has decided to speak out. Nevertheless, according to Kasten, humanity is not yet fully enslaved, but that is the long-term plan. Their plan is to enslave us and to take over the planet and all of the riches of this earth. Let's delve into this bizarre yet intriguing story. Who are the Reptilians? Kasten says, what you have to understand is that we're dealing with a race of beings who are so mentally powerful and have such a long history of occult development and scientific and technological development that it's going to take us about, I would say, 500 years to catch up with them. That's how advanced they are. He calls them probably the oldest race in the galaxy. According to the teachings of Alex Collier and others, they've had space travel and space technology for thousands of years, and they've been scouring the galaxy and dominating other star systems. As of this date, I think they have basically enslaved 21 star systems in this section of the galaxy that we know of. From Kasten's point of view, this means humanity is in a very, very menacing situation. They've targeted us for a takeover, but there's a lot more to the story, because it's not going to be easy for them. Help from elsewhere, but not a rescue. Kasten insists there are other beings trying to help, but they cannot simply step in and save us. You could say they're watching out for us. They're here to inspire us, to teach us, and to help us as best they can because they want us to succeed, but they cannot do it for us. The key, he says, is our own growth. We have to expand our consciousness to the point where the reptilian influence is no longer effective. Once we reach that point, they can no longer affect us. Part 2. War of Consciousness, Hybrids, and the Transhumanist Trap. Kasten says plainly that the Reptilians have kept humanity in a deliberately diminished state. They've got us in a state of being dumb and dumber, and they keep us in a state of basic stupidity, you might say, and that's how they continue to control us. He describes this in stark terms. There is really a war of consciousness. The Reptilians, in his description, are fundamentally different from humans. They don't have any of the traits that we have in terms of compassion, in terms of love. They don't understand those emotions at all. They only know how to dominate, to conquer, and to enslave. They're just here to basically treat us like we treat sheep. They have no respect for us, but they're starting to understand that we may become a threat. Fear as food, media as a weapon. One of the most important warnings Kasten offers is about fear itself. The thing that we have to be very careful of in this struggle with the Reptilians is fear, because they thrive on our fear. They literally gobble it up. They love it, and that's why they keep us in a state of fear. He says the strategy works through culture and distraction. They keep us in a dumbed-down state. They keep us watching cartoons and movies that don't make any sense. Through the media and through the banks, and through the various things that they control through the Illuminati, they keep us in that state because they know that once we rise above it, it'll be all over. To his mind, this is the reason for the constant push to keep people struggling at a survival level. Because we're all living on starvation wages, basically. Half the population of the planet lives below the poverty line, and the rest of us are so afraid of not being able to pay our debts that we're easily controlled. Human potential and why they're afraid of us. Despite the bleakness, Kasten insists that the reptilians are afraid of what humans could become. Despite the fact that they know they're much superior to us in terms of technology and in terms of history, they really are afraid of us. They are basically afraid of us because we have characteristics that they do not have. And we have a potential that is vastly better than theirs, and they know that. And that's another reason why they keep us in a dumbed-down state. He connects this to our spiritual origin. Our potential is vast because we come from a very elevated species in this galaxy. Our spirit is very strong, very powerful, and once it reaches its potential, then the reptilians will no longer be a threat. Elsewhere in the conversation, a remarkable idea is expressed. Alex Collier says that they really consider themselves royalty. Collier states, the Draconians teach their masses that they were here in this universe first, before humans. And as such, they are heirs to the universe and should be considered royalty. They find disgust in the fact that humans do not recognize this as a truth. However, as Kasten says, the only way they can keep it under control is by keeping us fascinated with games and tricks and all that stuff, and through mind control. Explaining how reptilians operate from underground, Kasten emphasizes their mastery of genetics. They live underground. Biotechnology is their strong suit. They know how to hybridize and create hybrid creatures. They abduct some human beings, and they hybridize them and make them part reptilian and part human, what we call the Illuminati. These hybrids in this model are then placed in key positions. Those are the entities that have taken over the media, the banks, the military. They control the planet because they're in power in every nation in the world. So, unless we can get above that, they will win. Perhaps the most incredible claims of underground alien bases come from Phil Schneider, a former government engineer who claimed to have helped build Dulce, New Mexico, in 1979. He claimed that he and others encountered aliens during the construction. Not only that, but military service members engaged in a gun battle with them, resulting in the loss of numerous human lives. Len Kasten also warns that their technology extends to robotics and AI far beyond what we publicly see. Their technology is so far ahead of ours. They have created robots that are actually superior to human beings in many ways. Artificial intelligence is the next stage that they're going to advance and put us through. And if we can get through that, if we can avoid being taken in by artificial intelligence, then we'll have a shot at beating them. Kasten links this directly to the ideology of transhumanism. There's a point in my book where I discuss the phenomenon of transhumanism. Their technology had reached the point where they could actually extract the consciousness from an entity and implant it into a robotic being or a clone. They perfected that eons ago in the part of the galaxy they come from, the Draco star system, Draco and Orion. He elaborates, if artificial intelligence doesn't manage to take over, and they can put those souls into those artificial bodies, they will be evil. They'll be reptilian, or they'll be controlled by the reptilians. It'll be all over for us if it reaches that point. M-KULTRA and total mind control. Kasten insists mind control is a central weapon. One of the things that the reptilians can do, since they live in the fourth dimension, which is the dream state, is they can convince you that they are demons, that they're not really extraterrestrials. They control what we call the demonic world because they're so mentally powerful. They can make you believe in anything they choose and create any illusion they want. So that's how they control the human race. He ties this to historical programs. I think you're probably aware of the M-KULTRA program after World War II. The Germans had perfected that really, and they brought it here when they came over with Operation Paperclip. By the end of January 1946, 160 Nazi scientists had been secreted into America. The single largest group was comprised of the 115 rocket specialists at Fort Bliss, Texas, led by Werner von Braun. Annie Jacobson, Operation Paperclip, the secret intelligence program that brought Nazi scientists to America. Kasten says mind control is one of the worst things that's been going on. Once your mind is controlled, they control you completely. They know how to do that. And the scope of mind control is wider than most people think. All the things that deceive people come under the heading of mind control, but they can actually take over your brain, your mind, your spirit. They know how to do that. It's not so much a cult as it is mentally powerful beings whose mind is so much more powerful than our logical mind that we can't really compete with it right at this point. But we will be able to. We're getting our way to it right now. The hypnagogic state and fourth-dimensional control. The conversation turns to the strange state between waking and sleep, and to reports of entities encountered there. Kasten agrees that this borderland of consciousness is crucial. I think that's called the hypnagogic state, if I'm not mistaken. And they control the dreamscape from the fourth dimension, and from that dimension they can influence large groups in our society to behave in certain ways, and that's how they prepare the young men of a nation for war, is through the dreamscape. He recommends specific researchers on this in-between realm. The best person to read on that subject is James Bartley by far. I would recommend him highly. Anything you can get by him will explain it in great detail. Carla Turner is considered a disciple of Bartley, and she was an important writer in this subject too. In an interview a few years back, Bartley stated, "We have been subjected to a long-term process of genetic and soul matrix manipulation. The human lifespan has been artificially shortened to facilitate the recycling of our souls for purposes known only to the reptilians, who see the human race as a resource. The dark gods of this world are well aware of the geological calendar of this planet and have prepared themselves accordingly." Who was Carla Turner? She was an accomplished author and university professor who wrote Into the Fringe, Taken, and Masquerade of Angels, all books that are recommended reading if you can get copies. They are treasure chests of knowledge and are hard to find. Dr. Carla Turner died of cancer on January 10, 1996, after being threatened for her work. She was just 48. She exposed a hidden truth about alien abductions, that the perpetrators are evil and reach to the highest levels of world politics. Part 3. Soft Disclosure, Atlantis and the Hidden Solar System. In the final stretch, the conversation ranges across disclosure politics, Atlantean history, secret space activity, and the future of human evolution. Kasten is skeptical of the slow, controlled release of UFO information through official channels and high-profile projects. They're not going to give us disclosure on a silver platter. Let's face it, they're just not going to do it. And the reason for that is that it's all controlled by the reptilians. Until you understand that, you can't make any progress. He describes the inner power structure like this. Our government and our military are controlled by what they call the cabal. The cabal is that segment of the military that is actively cooperating with the reptilians, and they are the so-called Illuminati. And again, he warns that any gradual release will be manipulated. I think what's behind it is the fact that they know they have to reveal the information slowly. If they can reveal it slowly, they can control it. And that's why people like David Wilcock are arguing for complete and utter disclosure all at once. If it's let out slowly, they control it, and they can poison it or change it any way they want. Wilcock stated in a recent seminar, "Our highest-level insiders have confirmed that aliens are engaged in a cosmic battle for your soul." Draco, reptilians, greys, and insectoids are featured in the negative group, whereas the positive Confederation group is much larger and usually consists of those who look more human-like, if not almost entirely human-looking. The Galactic History of the Reptilians and Robert Morning's Sky. The first part of Kasten's book, he notes, deals with the deep history of reptilians in another part of the galaxy. The part of the book that may surprise you is the first part of the book, because I discuss at length the history, the actual history, of the reptilians in their part of the galaxy. It seems like a fairy tale, I know, to a lot of people, but that information comes from a guy named Robert Morning Sky. When I discovered his book, I realized that all the dots got connected. Why this history matters? In explaining the history, the true history of the reptilians in their part of the galaxy, we have to understand how they have the ability to control us here in this part of the galaxy. Without knowing that, it becomes a very strange story. He then recounts the core of Morning Sky's story. Robert Morning Sky is a Native American. He was one of 6 young men who came upon a crashed alien craft. In the desert on the reservation, one of the aliens was alive in the wreckage, and they took him and brought him back to health. They found out that his name was Bektai. In gratitude, the being gave them a galactic education. He decided that he was going to teach them the whole story of the galaxy and how we got where we are. By using a small crystal to create images, the visitor began to communicate. Morning Star says, "The Star Elder's message was simple. Star beings have been here since Earth was a barren rock. They were here when man was created and have been here throughout his evolution. In some cases, their involvement was benevolent. In some cases, it was not. Man has been guided, and he has been misled. The star beings have been our gods and our devils." Morning Sky tried to present this as academic work. When he reached adulthood, he decided he was going to write his master's thesis on what he had learned from Bektai. He said the professors at his college laughed at him. They said they couldn't believe that he could believe this whole story of reptilian influence in the human race. Eventually, he wrote this book anyway, and that book became very useful to me in terms of understanding the psychology of the reptilians, and that's why I included it in the beginning part of the book. David Icke, Ridicule and Serpo. Returning to David Icke, Kasten highlights his courage. I think David Icke is probably one of the best people to read to really comprehend what's going on, because he was fearless in following the truth wherever he found it, and was not being worried about being ridiculed. Icke believes a group of reptilian humanoids, called the Babylonian Brotherhood, controls humanity. They go way back to ancient Sumerian times and likely responsible for our mysterious evolutionary jumps. You got to give Icke a lot of credit for that, because when he started talking about these things, everyone thought he was crazy. He was literally ridiculed on television in England several times. They laughed at him, and the host of the show said, "They're not laughing with you, David, they're laughing at you." And he had to swallow that insult, but he did, and he went on to write some really great books. Kasten has had similar experiences with his Serpo work. We have a UFO Congress here in Phoenix, and one of the guys that was directing it, I asked him if he was interested in my Serpo story, and he looked at me and he said, "You believe that we sent 12 Americans to a distant star? That story is ridiculous." That was 5 years ago. According to leaked emails, an exchange program with extraterrestrials was implemented in 1965, in which 12 people, 10 men and 2 women, were selected to visit their planet. This enigmatic journey will take us to an extraordinary place, located 39 light-years from the solar system. But opinion on the reality of such an operation shifted over time. Kasten says, now some of the other UFO investigators have come around to understanding that story, namely Linda Moulton Howe, who now talks about it freely and openly. After 5 years, what can he say now? And now it's pretty much accepted. You just have to follow the truth wherever it leads you, that's all. He describes his own method. That's what I try to do, is to connect the dots, and if the truth takes me off in a strange direction, I go there anyway because I really want to know. I want to know the truth, and if you can't get to the truth, then what good is it? What good is any of it? A UFO encounter as hidden catalyst and the reality of astrology. Kasten believes his own UFO contact in the Air Force silently prepared him for this path. I doubt very much if I would have gone in that direction if I hadn't had that subconscious influence from that experience. I think whatever happened to me on that craft, it prepared me very much for theosophy, astrology, all of it. And they're all connected. They're all connected. Time travel, Mars and colonies in the solar system. Caston knows Andrew Basiago personally and takes his claims seriously. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, Andy was a child participant in Project Pegasus, which was the US time-space exploration program. I know Andy very well. He's a great guy. I like him, and I've talked to him on many occasions. I actually attended the MUFON conference in Las Vegas about 2 years ago, and he was on the panel. He also gets ridiculed by a lot of people because they say, well, how can anybody walk through a doorway and be on Mars? It just doesn't make sense. But Caston has heard similar stories from credible insiders. One of my best friends, Bob Dean, who was also a great teacher, told me that a general told him that's exactly what he did. An Air Force general told him that he walked through a door, and when he got through the door, he was on Mars. So he insists, it's all possible. You have to keep your mind open to all of these things. Andrew himself has stated, imagine a world in which one could jump through Grand Central Teleport in New York City, travel through a tunnel in time-space, and emerge several seconds later at Union Teleport in Los Angeles. Such a world has been possible since 1967 to 68, when teleportation was first achieved by DARPA's Project Pegasus. Caston says there is already an extensive human and non-human presence on off-world bases. There are large colonies of humans on Mars and on the Moon already. Corey Goode talks about the Lunar Operations Command, the LOC, which is where he was taken. According to Goode, there is a battle between a spiritual ascension and a technological ascension that is playing out in multiple timelines and realities. This battle involves reptilian forces. But it goes further than that. The key is that it's really not all about Earth, it's about the solar system, because there are colonies in the solar system that are unbelievable, including one beyond Mars called Ceres, CERES, which is really an asteroid, yet that one too is inhabited. So all of this was taken into account when you start to understand what's going on here. The Reptilians, he says, have major bases there. The Reptilians have large colonies on both the Moon and Mars, and they don't allow the humans to take over much of either of those planets. They keep those well under control. According to Alex Collier, the Reptilian race actually brought the Moon to Earth, using it as a massive transport ship. This ship allegedly harbored not only Reptilians, but also reptilian-human hybrids and the first humans to set foot on our planet. Strategic value of our solar system. Why does any of this matter to a powerful reptilian empire? Caston explains, for one thing, it's at the very fringe of the galaxy. It's at the very outer band of the galactic world, whatever you want to call it, and it's at the very entranceway to what Stuart Swerdlow and others call the Route 95 of the galaxy. It's the route that most of the commercial traffic takes in and out of the center of the galaxy, to the end fringes of the galaxy. So it's of great strategic importance, this planet, this lonely planet, way in the outskirts of the outer arm of the galaxy. This makes Earth a prize. The Reptilians want it for that reason. They want to control it. And since they already control 21 star systems nearby, they want this to be their crowning achievement. However, the Federation is not going to let them take it. The Federation is helping the human race on this planet as best they can. But as I said, they can't do it for us. So that's where we are. That's where we are today. Swerdlow state. The name Draco is actually the name of the star system. It is the whole area of the reptilian races. The Reptilians are tired of living hidden lives, and they are very anxious to become public once more, as they have been in the past. In order to do that, they are literally blitzing the media with reptilian-like programs and shows, especially for children, and they are preparing adults through electromagnetic transmissions for the public appearance of reptilians. Nazis on the Moon and the commercial solar system. One of Kasten's more controversial claims is about who first landed on the moon. The first man on the moon was not who you think it was. It wasn't Neil Armstrong, it was a German. It was a German soldier. In 1942, they were able to actually send a spaceship to the moon. That's how long this has been going on. He says Nazi technology had progressed far beyond what the public knew. Later, they established colonies. After that, the Germans developed a colony there, and they went into business, commercialism, on the moon and Mars. I know this sounds fantastic, but I'm quite convinced that this is exactly what's happened, and that's why Elon Musk and others are so fascinated by lunar and Martian travel right now. He claims there are already huge economic interests off-world. We don't understand really what's going on the moon or Mars right now, but there are large populations in both places. I mean, there are very, very, very valuable metals on the moon and on Mars that are being mined by international companies. Believe it or not, already, and that's why all of this interest in Mars all of a sudden is taking place. Thoth, Egypt, and Atlantis, a lost golden age. Turning back in time, Kasten places ancient Egypt as a direct successor to Atlantis, led by Thoth. What I know about that is that Thoth was basically an Atlantean. He came from Atlantis, and you have to also get into the story of Atlantis before you can really understand the whole story. Because those pyramids were designed by him. He was the architect of the pyramids of Giza. In his view, Egypt itself might be considered the daughter of Atlantis. The Egyptian civilization came into full flowering almost suddenly. There was no primitive state, and that's because it was basically founded by refugees from Atlantis, and Thoth was one of those, as I understand it. He was the architect, a great mathematician, and a highly spiritually involved individual. As I understand, he lived to be very old, possibly 300 years old. He then sketches his vision of Atlantis itself. The Atlantean civilization was a golden age. It was an incredible civilization. They had developed technology and spirituality that was beyond belief. They were already flying spacecraft to the moon. Their streets were paved with gold, and their garments were made, woven with gold. And a single central power system. They were able to control all of the electricity that they produced through one tower in the middle of the island that sent electricity all throughout the land and powered the entire civilization. It was an amazing place, a truly amazing place. But this Atlantean humanity was not like us. That race, that human race, was not the same human race that we know today. They were much more enlightened, and their purpose here on this planet, the Atlanteans, was to confront the Reptilians. That's why they came here. He links this to a Federation decision. The Federation was determined not to let the Reptilians take over the solar system, and that's why they sent a very fierce race of humans from the Pleiades called the Atlans, Atlans, to confront them here on this planet, and it was because of those battles that the Reptilians went underground. And although the Reptilians remained powerful, Atlantis flourished. The Atlanteans were then free to develop a utopian civilization for 50,000 years. But those were not the same humans. They did not have a reptilian brain. We do. We have the reptilian brain, and so we're not quite as human as the Atlanteans. Creation of modern humans and tweaks to our species. In this framework, modern humans are relatively recent. When you read the book, you'll realize that the origins of the human race are only about 50,000 years old. We started when Atlantis sank around 12,000 BC, but the human race was still very young at that point. We were, he says, born from a compromise. The human race was created as a compromise between the Reptilians and the Atlanteans, the humans at that time. And our genome was repeatedly adjusted. We had to be tweaked 22 times by our extraterrestrial friends before we reached where we are today, namely Homo sapiens sapiens. Zecharia Sitchin famously argued that the rapid development of Homo sapiens from earlier hominids was a result of genetic intervention by an alien race known as the Anunnaki. Many believe this race are actually reptilians. For Sitchin, their intervention filled in the so-called missing link that scientists have struggled to explain within the framework of conventional evolutionary theory. Caston is cautiously optimistic. We eventually might be able to develop a civilization like the Atlanteans if we keep on developing, because we are still getting help from our extraterrestrial friends if we don't let the transhuman agenda and the artificial intelligence take over. AI, echo devices, and the coming singularity. Caston argues that we are not fully enslaved yet, but the danger is approaching. Once they develop artificial intelligence to the zenith, it's going to be very difficult for us to escape from that, because the robots will be so powerful and their intelligence will be so far beyond our own that we're not going to be able to get past it. So, he says, we've got to get on top of that and control that from the outset. He warns that everyday consumer tech is already a surveillance and control net. These things that we put in our homes now, what do you call them? Echo, right? Those things are listening to your conversations and taking them all down. The Path to Victory, Consciousness and the 100th Monkey. In the appendix of his book, Caston includes what he believes is an extraterrestrial message from a being named Kyla of Procyon, describing how to win this struggle. He summarizes that teaching. The whole appendix was written by an extraterrestrial. His name is Kyla, K-Y-L-A, and he's from the star system Procyon, which is pretty close to our solar system. And in that whole discussion, he tells us how to avoid and how to beat them at their own game. But he says it's very difficult, and the way to do it is to raise your consciousness to the point where you can focus on the most divine image you can think of. A Buddha, or perhaps Jesus, or perhaps a teacher, whatever, Amma, anything, whatever religion. The method, he says, is to hold that focus steadily. If you can keep that going, this is how Mahatma Gandhi was able to reach the point that he did and to free the Indian people. Once you get to that point, they can't touch you. They can trick you through mind control. But if you've expanded your consciousness to the point where it has reached its full potential, the 100th monkey syndrome starts to take over. It spreads, and large segments of the human population catch on to that divine potential. Then we're above and beyond. They can't touch us anymore because they cannot reach that. They cannot reach the point we can reach into the 5th dimension. They can't do that. They live in the 4th dimension and the lower astral. He describes our present moment as a stalemate. It's a stalemate right now. It truly is a stalemate, because the human race is growing exponentially very quickly, and once the 100th monkey concept kicks in, then it's not going to be a contest anymore. Where to find Len Caston's work? If you want to learn more about this, just look up Secret Journey to Planet Serpo, Alien World Order, and Secret History of Extraterrestrials on Amazon.